with it. Alrighty. Let's see. I suppose we might as well, in this case, at this point, just jump right into it. So I'm going to start off right here. Ladies and gentlemen who are here and who are joining us tonight, welcome to From the Horse's Mouth. I am your host, TheLoyalBro, and tonight with me I have our guest, Haymaker.
Hey, hello.
Alright, well, Haymaker here is known for, he's quite a name that if you've been around long enough, you've definitely heard. Starting way back in the early days, 2011, him and his co-partner Zako were big forerunners in the Brony music community at that scene at the time. Taking storm in early days with their song Luna's Roost, and I think that was, 2011, like fall time?
November, I think. Actually, it's probably
it's 5
right
years.
Now.
It's right about 5 years from now. Yeah.
Now I want to look.
Yeah, I just had it playing before. I didn't think to look. But anyway, as I was saying with that, those two were quite the duo back at the time of it. Zako has moved on to other pastures these days. But Haymaker here is still kicking around. Currently, he is involved working with the Overmare Studios for Fallout Equestria, the game, which was inspired by the fanfic made by K-Cat. And he just has that country charm to him with a lot of his music, and I'm thrilled to have him here tonight.
It's great to be here.
Alrighty, so I think we've already answered the whole "how are you" bit. So I'm just gonna ask, tell us a bit about yourself, apart from what I've already divulged to the public here.
Thank you for the intro. Also, just curiously, it was November 13th, so it'll be 5 years and 3 days. Yeah,
wow.
I just looked it up. So, but yeah, you know what? Like I babbled on with that, but I missed your question. What was your question?
Just tell us a bit about yourself, apart from what I've already mentioned.
Oh yeah. Well, as you said, I make fan music for Pony sometimes. That's probably where anybody listening here would know, if I can find the right people, And as we talked about before, I live with a bunch of roommates in kind of a rundown neighborhood in New Hampshire. And I'm, probably the thing that my name's Steve. I'm probably a little older than the average demographic for the people of this, for the folks who watch this show. But it's been a great ride anyway. It's been a lot of fun.
Great to hear. So I guess I'll just break through the ice with this one for the obvious one. When did you first hear about this thing we call My Little Pony Friendship is Magic?
The first time I heard it, it was from an acquaintance of mine, sort of a friend of a friend who was like a 4chaner type, and he was into it at the very start of it, and he was telling me he was getting into it, and I told him he was out of his mind, actually. That was the first time I'd ever heard of it. And then, later I found the show by, essentially on Twitter, a couple friends of mine were kind of ribbing on each other, talking about, who they, I bet who their favorite My Little Pony character would be. And they're kind of busting each other's stones, and I remember one of them was like, I bet you're an Applejack guy or whatever. And I was curious at that point, after having those two experiences between that friend who said, yeah, I'm getting into it, and this was very early. This was a couple of months before, and like I said thought he was crazy. And then hearing it again a few months later, and I'm like, I need to check this out because obviously it's something. So that's what I was curious about. That's how I get curious about it.
Nice. So yeah, this definitely, when you say a lot of people who, in my experience, who say 4chan are the ones who have definitely been around for the early first wave of it. I mean, as evident by the fact that you were making music for it, and at the start of that scene between 2011 and 2012 was probably one of the peak moments for all that.
It was a lot of fun. It was very different. It was very different, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So it kind of answers how long you've been around since longer than I have. That's for sure.
Well, to be fair, I really wasn't one of the first
of
people.
Course.
I kind of came in on the second wave. I really started watching right around the end of the first season. That's when I really started paying attention. Before that, the first season was still airing, but it was the end of the first season.
Yeah.
Before that, I had it was not on my radar. It took that conversation that happened between my friends on Twitter to kind of put it on my radar.
So, when you found out that there was a whole community of people of the older male demographic watching this, how was that? Did you jump right in with that, or were you kind of hesitant with it?
I tried to. And one thing I noticed, and it like I said, it was very different back then, was there wasn't a lot of the social connections that you would make these days. A lot of the, there wasn't Skype rooms and Discord servers and everything full of people. It was very difficult to connect at first. You'd have to either know somebody who knew somebody and then they'd create a Skype chat or something, or it was really hard to connect. And that was one of the first things that I remember, is it would be nice to have a more established network. But then I did jump in and I did make some friends, and that's how I met Zako. Was through that. I ended up meeting him early on, and we just got along because we were both pretty grown up, had a good grown up conversation, talked about all kinds of stuff. And he's like, yeah, if you're on again, bug me or whatever. There was some TeamSpeak server or something somebody was using as a conversation thing for ponies, and so we started with that.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. Back then, it was really about knowing the people, just knowing and being in the right place for a lot of this stuff.
Some of it, it's hard to remember, but Equestria Daily was around. But a lot of it just seems that these days there's a lot more ways to connect. Back then it was a lot harder to find other fans. It wasn't as simple. And so when you found somebody that you liked, that was you could be friends with this person, it was great, because it was hard to do. Sometimes it was hard to find other people. So it was,
when you found him, you latched onto him.
Yeah. And that's kind of how me and Zako started working.
Yeah, which leads me to actually, I guess it's a good lead into that. So I guess that kind of answers how you met Zako. With that, it was through just really pure chance, almost.
Yeah, we ended up on the same TeamSpeak server somehow. I can't remember why we were both there, but we ended up on that same TeamSpeak server. And like I said, we had conversations, and it was cool. So we're like, hey, yeah, we'll talk again another time, and that was that.
And so, did you guys know, like between each other, like with your music experience and his, like, how did that all start?
Essentially, I had recorded a few months previous. Somebody had given me like a ukulele, like, here, have a ukulele. And I these are the gifts I get from my friends, they're great. They give me ukuleles. And I recorded this like little uke cover of like this Fountains of Wayne song, and I stuck it up on a YouTube channel just for the hell of it. And I mean, it had like 30 views on the damn thing. It was only, I don't even know why I did it, other than kind of like, hey, thanks for the ukulele, look, I made this little song. And I showed it to him, and he's like, wow, you could actually sing. And I'm like, oh, sort of. And he's like, I like to make music, we should do something. And I'll kind of diverge into that right now. My initial reaction when he says we should do something, because that's very popular in this fandom right now, people are doing it, it's a lot of fun, we should totally make a song. My initial reaction was, nah, no way, I'm not doing that. And he's like, why not? I'm like, I don't know, I don't know if I feel comfortable. It had been years since I had actually really done any music, many years. I kind of quit at one point in my life and really did very little with it. And getting drawn into the fandom, doing this again. I'm like, I'm not sure I want to do that again. Yeah. And I sat on it for a couple of days and I thought about it and I thought it was being silly. And I said, you know what, actually, yeah, let's do it. I'll do it. And that's where Luna's Ruse came around. He's like, I got this idea for a song, and he's showing me stuff, and I'm like, okay. And yeah.
Huh. All right then. So then when you guys got together, you just decided you kind of, obviously that led up to eventually you two working on making Luna's Roost with all that. Was he planning on doing music like that beforehand, with like even before he met you? Was that kind of just like, hey, maybe we could do something together?
I suspect, though I'm very hesitant. I have a lot to put words in his mouth. Working with Zacho was interesting. He's brilliant, he's complex, and he's almost enigmatic. It's kind of hard to know what he's really thinking all the time. Like he's a very enigmatic person. And so I'm very hesitant to say what he feels or what he thought, because a lot of times I don't really know for sure. But I think he may have had the idea of maybe finding someone who could do music, he could do music with, and he found a singer. I think that's a fair guess. That's very possible that's what he was up to. But I know as soon as he found out that I could sing, that he was interested in doing something. And yeah.
Yeah. So overall, working with him through when you guys kicked off of that, how was that?
Oh, I enjoyed the heck out of it. I really when we first, and I wasn't sure. You have to understand too that I was still new to the fandom, still new to finding people to talk with and talk to. And here's this guy who's like, oh yeah, we should make music together. I mean, we've talked over TeamSpeak a couple of times and talked about movies and, a little about music and some other stuff. But,
yeah,
for all I know, this could have been, it was going to be terrible, which is part of the reason I was afraid of saying yes. I was like, oh God, what if this guy's really bad and I have to tell him, no, I don't want to do this, I mean, that sounds terrible, but it's true. And then he comes up with this stuff and I'm like, oh God, this is going to be good. He's good.
Mine was just blown in that moment.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, this is actually going to be worthwhile. This is going to be great. So when he started showing me the first things that he was working on, I was really impressed. And I said, well, hell, yeah, I'm on board now. I mean, I was a little hesitant at first, but I'm like, yeah, I'm on board. This guy's great. So, then that Luna's Ruse took a long time. Luna's Ruse was a lot of agonizing detail and trying to get everything just right.
It remains a favorite for a lot of people, I know.
It was so much fun to make. I wish I could have made it now. Like, I wish when we were doing it, I knew then what I know now.
Mm-hmm.
I think
it would be better.
I think it could be better in some spots, but even so, like, I'll listen to it every once in a great while, and I'm like, he really wrote a great song. I did not contribute that much to Luna's Ruse. Most of what I contributed were the lyrics.
And the singing.
And the first verse was his melody. He already had a melody laid out for what he wanted singing. And so the melody on the first verse is his. The second verse, I'm like, you know what? I have my own ideas for the second verse, and sang the second verse in a different melody, which is, if you listen to it, they're a little different. That's why I was actually, it was a Hendrix thing. I was thinking of anything like really spacey Jimi Hendrix stuff, because that's what I wanted that verse to feel like. But that was about it. All that music. And, I played the guitar on it, but I had a hard time with the guitar. I had this cheap mic. I had hardly any. Actually, I had this awful mic that we tried to use, couldn't even use it. I had to go out and buy a mic, had to buy an interface for the computer, didn't know how to use it, didn't know what the heck I was doing. It was an adventure, and it was probably the most fun I've ever had because it was such an adventure. It was all new. I had no idea what I was doing, and we were just going for it.
Sounds like a great time. So I have to ask. So this is jump back off of Zako here for a bit. Let's talk about you with music making. So was this really your first soiree into music making? I know you said you're pretty old, so I imagine have you had
Yeah.
like experience prior with other things like other bands or anything like
When
that?
when I was in, high school and in a little while after high school,
Yeah.
I was in a band. We played little shows. We would do things, and it was fun. It was just a loud rock and roll type band situation, and I did that. And I always would write songs. Um, After a while, I got kind of down on making music and down on myself. Had some problems, and I ended up kind of stopping making music for a long time. And that's, like I said, then when I moved, when I got that ukulele as a gift is when I started. I just wrote that one little song, and then Sako heard it, and it went from there.
Alrighty then. Okay, so you can play the ukulele. Any other instruments that you can play around with typically?
Well, I primarily think of myself as a singer, though I can play a bit of guitar. I do have that ukulele, which is pretty much the same thing as a guitar, pretty
Yeah.
much. Um, I can, I can play a bit of harmonica. I can bang out chords on a piano, but I'm not particularly good at it. I would rarely record myself doing something like that. Mostly what I think of myself, if anything, is kind of like a singer-songwriter type more than anything else.
Hmm. Okay. So as you got more involved with between people like Zako and then later on to be the Wasteland Wears with them, when you do, I don't know how much creative input you have with the music making itself, but I know since you do the lyrics too, do you usually write the lyrics first or do you help out with the music end of it?
Well, when it's my stuff, if it's my music, I kind of try to write the music and the words at the same time. And what I'll do is I'll grab a guitar and I'll strum along and then try to come up with interesting melodies or points over it. And I will write down at least the general gist of the lyrics. They'll get polished up later, but I'll try to come up with lines and I will work on them at the same time a lot of times. When it comes to the Wailers, usually what ends up happening is the guys in the Wailers are often better than me at a lot of things, and composition is one of them. And so a lot of times I'll have a song in front of me that's already been pretty much written, and me and Leondi will often work on the lyrics in it, and the two of us work on the lyrics a lot. So a lot of times in the Wailer stuff, the music ends up getting written first before the lyrics do.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, so let's see where we're at here. So are there any other artists that inspire you with what you do now? Either pony or non-pony. Curious about that.
There's a lot. I would say, just to give a reasonable and quick and concise answer, that probably the most inspirational musical artist for me ever has been, of all people, Ray Charles. Of all the singers, he's probably the person I studied the hardest. The one that really made me want to sing. And there's bunches of others that I could tell you. I love old R&B and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, that's kind of my favorite stuff. But for me, when it comes to singing, he's probably the most inspirational person that I have.
Alrighty. Okay. So let's go. Let's see. Show itself. I'm curious with that. So I already know this, but I'm going to ask anyway. Best pony.
Oh, Applejack. Yeah, I'm an Applejack guy for sure.
Why do you think the background's that, people?
What's that?
Anyway, no, like the people in the chat know. Yeah, I have it as the background.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've been around for it all for that. So I mean, it's probably hard to narrow these all down. But the show itself, you got a favorite episode?
I that's a tough one. That really is hard because there's so many now, and I like a lot of them. Off the top of my head, I almost want to say Ponyville Confidential, just because I love the Cutie Mark Crusaders. To me, it seems like the CMC are closer to friends than a lot of times the main six are. Like they're so tight, and it reminds me a lot of the friendships I had, especially when I was younger. that I just love their episodes, and that one was just funny. I got a kick out of that one. So maybe Ponyville Confidential.
I know you have a CMC song, "Not Quite Angels," I believe.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
is that like quite inspired from that one, or just in general with that trio?
In general with that trio. And it was funny. Like I even back then, I didn't really say it specifically in that song, but there's a line. It's when we dream all together, all at once, like three merging streams. And I always figured, even back then, that when they eventually got their cutie marks, it was going to be is one thing. Of course it would. I mean, that's the show. But I mean, I just even knew even back then that was going to happen. I just love them. I don't know what it is. And a lot of people, back then, it wasn't cool to like them either. A lot of people
remember.
Oh, they're annoying. I don't like them. I liked them anyway. I thought they were the cutest things.
That's fair. Yeah, they were in the middle ground for me. I believe in the beginning, like they were. I by no means hated them, but I wouldn't say like, oh my god, more CMC, please. later on now they've definitely matured a lot, and they've proven to be one of the most interesting characters in the show.
I always enjoyed them, and it seems to me like that kind of friendship is something that's special to me when you're that close that you do everything together. I always thought that was just a cool facet of their characters.
They're definitely the most genuine for their age group.
Yeah,
I definitely agree there. So with the show itself, though, I really know that I always like to ask this question: is what do you think? Why do you think the show is as popular as it is? Like, what aspect to it do you think is what's given it such this huge, crazy phenomena, this cult following almost?
Sorry. I would say it appeals to a lot of people on a lot of levels. And so for me, the art is adorable. The characters are fantastic. You get the little references, which I get a kick out of. And that's just what I like about it. For other people, I'm sure it's different. I can almost see a little bit of a rebellion in it, choosing to love something that's so out of like what your demographic would normally love. And it's nice to embrace a message that's really positive, especially when all the negativity rages around us, because, there's a lot of it, especially lately. Having something positive to grab onto is important. And all of those things, I don't think there's any one or two things. I think it's all of that stuff and probably more than I'm leaving out. I think it's way multifaceted. There's a lot of reasons. It just hit the right tone at the right time with the right people and blew up.
Alrighty, let's see here. So, do we have any people in the chat here? I got so many retweets on that, and I have no idea if anyone else has popped in yet. Curious.
I've got a couple too, but
it's no big deal. I get what I get. Really, I'm here for the fun. Let's see, back to all this here. Here's a good one, actually. I'm gonna ask: is there anybody who you wish you could collaborate with?
This was. I'd love to work with almost anybody. I really would.
Even me?
You know what? If anybody that wanted to work, but here's the problem.
Yeah.
I'm kind of scared of most people. Like, I'm kind of difficult to work with. I'm not a jerk. Like, I'm a really nice guy, but I get really slow, and I can get really depressed sometimes. And though that's not something I normally bring up, it does impact me in my working. Like the guys at Zaco had to deal with it. So did the guys at
Wasteland Whalers.
Yeah, the Whalers. They have to deal with it. And sometimes just stuff doesn't flow. Like I go through whole dry sessions. I've worked with some people that are real pros. I mean, they're really good at what they do. And we're fast. I'm difficult. I'm a pain in the neck. I'm just an amateur. I admit this. I'm just an amateur. I have a hard time working through this sometimes. And so I'm very careful who I collaborate with. People have asked me, and a lot of times I'm just like, no, not because I don't want to work with them, but because in some cases it was stuff that was out of my wheelhouse. But other times it was just like, I feel terrible. You're not going to think good of me. You're going to think that who is this flake? And it's true. And so it's really tough, if I caught the right person on the right day, I'm having a good day and you catch me, maybe, but I hate to say that there's one particular person I'd like to work with. I'd like to work with this person. I'm afraid that they would not think much of me when the time was done, just because some of the issues that I have, to be blunt.
Fair enough. I can understand. At least you know to not give their hopes up.
Well, not even that. Not even getting their hopes up. It's more that I don't want to drag them down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why did I even ask this guy in the first place? It's more that, but yeah.
All right. Okay. So, with your own music itself, though, I'm curious. You've done a lot, honestly, for more. Like, you're quite underrated, for one. I just want to point this out here. I think that between you and Zako, with those guys, like, you're definitely those diamonds in the rough from like those days, for one. You two have been honestly my favorite duo of musicians that ever did. Like, I know people talk about like the acoustic Brony and like Manapony and those guys, and they're great too, but I feel like between you and Zako had quite an interesting connection. You have a very country-esque voice, and Zako has just got this incredible talent with his synths and things.
He's good.
He's great. I wish he could be here with us tonight, because it would make for a much more entertaining evening. And but I digress. And then now with the Wailers, you definitely fit into that country-esque vibe there, quite much, even more so than you did before. But anyway, I'm going on a tangent here. Your favorite musical piece that you've created, which one is if you had a personal favorite, if you had to pick?
Oh, okay. Somebody asked me this question recently, and I told them mail it in. And the reason that I told them mail it in was because I really liked the way that the way the lyrics came out in that. I thought it came out really cute and really just, to me, for what I wanted, flawlessly worked lyrically through the whole song. But the whole reason I set that up is because somebody had actually asked me that question recently. I thought about it after I answered that question, because it was an off-the-cuff answer. And I think actually what I'm most proud of is the honesty that I did with Xylem. And the reason that I say that is that was my attempt at making a show-style song, and it took months. It was a lot of really hard work piecing stuff together, recording stuff just right, doing it over and over and over and over again. And it came out, in my opinion, well. And I am so happy. Like, even now, if I go back and listen to it, I'm like, that came out really well. And I did a lot of it. A lot of that work on that was me. A lot of it was silent too, but a lot of it was me. And I got a lot of the sound right. The only thing that drives me crazy is, and I if I could change anything, this is what I would change. Some of the panning in the vocals drive me nuts. I don't know what I was thinking when I mixed that. But everything else just works like a champ, and I think is probably the most favorite thing, just for powering through it. Taking something, spending a long time on it, getting it to work, and at the end of the day it worked out pretty well. That was I think honesty is that.
Yeah. Mail it in. That one, honestly, that one is really well done. Like, wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's definitely, I can agree with you where I've gotten better over the years after all the music I've listened to from this fandom and just in general. I've definitely gotten better seeing it. Okay, yes, I can see how this one is much better mastered and mixed and so on. But a lot of times it ends up being where sometimes just even the ones that aren't so great just end up being still quite so great. Your favorite. But mail it in, no, definitely. That was I can agree with you on that one. Being
Nail It
well
In
done.
was just fun because I liked the way that
You
the
sound
lyrics ended up.
honestly, what I think of like your enthusiasm in the sound of that song, it just came on actually. um, that's
Perfect timing.
that is great timing. Um, you definitely sound like you enjoyed that one. But anyway,
I had a lot of fun with that. Yeah.
yeah. So now what I will ask here is, which one was the most difficult in making?
Um. If I I would probably say Honesty was one of the most difficult because it took so long. I mean, if you talk to Xylan, he was like, "Are you gonna finish this or what?" I mean, I got layers of guitars and banjos and all this stuff going on, all the different vocal parts, stitching them together. It was a lot of work, and that was really difficult. But I think that's why I like it so much, is I managed to get through that and pull it off.
Okay. You said there's honesty.
Honesty, yes. It was something that I did with Silent. It was my attempt at like a show style song. It's a country blues kind of
Okay.
thing, but I figured it was about as close as I could get to something that, might be in the show type thing. It was called Honesty. Yeah.
I don't think I've heard of that one actually. That one might have slipped me.
Well,
I'll probably have to give that a look later then, or listen as it were.
yeah, check it out if you get a chance.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, check it out if you get a chance.
Okay. So 2013, end of that tail end, was when Zako had pretty much went on his merry way there. When that happened, were you planning on making more music for the fandom?
You know what? Like, I had so much fun doing it that, yeah, I knew that I would. I kind of figured that it wouldn't be as big. He had offered to put stuff up on his website even after he was done with it. It's like, if you make a song, get some art, we'll stick it up on Zaka website. There's more subscribers if I wanted to. And I thought about doing that. I'll put little things up on my SoundCloud. So I thoroughly planned on doing it, though I planned on keeping doing it until I got bored with it. And I was still having a lot of fun at that time, so I was making little things.
Alrighty, yeah. I didn't even know he had a website.
Well,
or is that like a thing of the past too?
I meant to say YouTube.
Oh, okay.
That was my bad choice of words.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, you found your new company with the Whalers. I know that. So, what were they approached? That really ties me into my next question here. Did you approach them, or did they approach you about making music?
This is a kind of a interesting story itself. I had told you that I have some mental problems sometimes, and I was in the worst way at the time when the Whalers tried to contact me, and I didn't even know. Like I like 2 months go by. So they sent me a message on SoundCloud. I hadn't even logged into SoundCloud for 2 months. I finally, feeling a little better, I get up, I wrote a little song. I go to upload it to SoundCloud for the first time in months, and there's like, ding, there's a little message there from somebody. So I grabbed it, and it was them. They had contacted me, asking me, hey, would you want to work on this? And I'm like, this is from 2 months ago. I'm like, they're probably still not interested. And I thought about it for a day. I sat on it for a day thinking, do I want to get involved with a group of people? And I'm like, you know what? I kind of do. This might be fun. So I wrote back and said, yeah, I'd be interested. And they're like, well, come on, let's talk. And I'm like, here, I wrote the song. You want it? And that's where, that's how that started. And they had just basically said that, they needed somebody because of the way that Overmere Studios / the Wasteland Whalers. The Wasteland Whalers are Overmere Studios' in-house band, if you will. We make the music and the background music for the Fallout Equestria game. So if you're not familiar with Overmere Studios, anybody that's listening, if you go to theovermare.com, you can find their website, or you could go and look up Overmare Studios on YouTube and find a bunch of videos. And it's a big project with a lot of people in it. 2D animators, 3D animators, script people, all writing this game and doing it out of love and no money. And I'm like, this sounds like right up my alley. And they were looking for people that could write in an older style. And I think maybe the country thing was there. Like, I don't really, I know I kind of am, but I don't really think of myself necessarily as a country musician. I think of myself as more of a rootsy type musician, but I have a good country voice and I'll use it. And these, between the New Vegas thing, which had a lot of country stuff in it, and just the older style, I love making older sounding music. It's great. I think that they thought that I might be a good fit, and I am forever in their debt because I've had a ton of fun and a great time working with them.
I can say they thought right, in my opinion. Like I picked up the that pre-alpha that they have out right now with that, and I mean it's very crude, very simple, but I'm impressed that they've gotten it this far with everything. And I mean, just tuning into the radio station here, I was just like, this is so surreal and amazing to me. Just with that, and it's just funny because when I remember, what was it? It was BronyCon this year when I saw it was Haymaker Way Somewhere. I was just like, Haymaker, oh my god, he lives, he freaking lives. I was so excited for that.
So different than what I was doing with Sacco, but
it is, but I was
so different than anything I was used to before that.
Yeah, no, and I was like, Wasteland Whalers. I was like, never even heard. And then my one buddy who was with me told me like, oh yeah, they're doing this at the Fall Equestria game. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. That's a thing that's happening. I saw a glimpse of it the previous convention at their booth, and I was like, I don't care, I'm freaking singing. I thought it was a blast. Like, I've been to a steampunk convention with my ex before, and that they had a band there. I forget their name, but they had the similar kind of stuff, and I can dig that when it's done with that kind of like that jazzy, that old style, old timey feel. It's really nice to listen to at times, and it was a blast hearing it live for that matter. So, but with that, that's what it was like. Oh wow! So definitely gotta check more of this stuff out. It's like wow, I've missed a lot of good stuff from him.
Oh, thank you. It's been an absolute joy to work with them. Because, and when you work with, I prefer to work with other people because I have plenty of shortcomings. The stuff that I fall short on. If I work with the right people, they cover up those shortcomings and help me be even better, and vice versa. There are people that have shortcomings. There's a couple things that I'm pretty good at that I can help people with. Yeah. And so when you get the right group of people together, it works great. And the way that our setup is with the Whalers, it's just the right mix of people. To cover each other's weaknesses and to push each other's strengths forward, that it really makes it a very rewarding experience.
Definitely. Yeah, it sounds you've had a good time with them though, so that's great. So that pretty much answers my one question about like how it's been working alongside them. It sounds like it's been very smooth and very a great experience. So let's see here. Any projects that you planned on creating but never ended up completing?
The big one, and I wish I don't even have this file anymore, though I know it is floating around the internet. I've seen somebody had it. But me, right around the Honesty time, around the time of Honesty, I can't remember if it was slightly before or slightly after. Me and him and Feather were going to do a Christmas song.
Oh yes, I remember. I was reading the comments. I think I saw bits of with Feather. She's been gone too for a while.
Yeah, we were gonna do a Christmas song, and I wrote something I thought was pretty decent, and then we started putting it all together, and some jerk stole Xylan's laptop.
Oh.
And that was the end of that project. And so, if anybody actually has uh, that original file, if you could put it on the web for me, I'll give you some contact info, at the end of the show.
Yeah, we have that ready too.
If anybody still has that file, I'd be dying to hear it. I went and I've looked to see if I can find it on the internet, and I haven't. But it was there was a half completed version that I think Xylan hosted for a short period of time.
That somebody probably had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting how so many things could go like gone, like just disappear. A lot of things, a lot of music, like it's people like So Great and Powerful, for instance, are lucky because they have a whole dedicated group to like archive their stuff. But I know so many people who posted things before where it's like, I kick myself sometimes. It's like, why didn't I save that? Now it's gone because they deleted it off of YouTube. And it's like, that was so good.
Yes, and things end up missing that way. And all the working files. I mean, I might have had. And this is a long time ago, and probably a couple of digital audio workstations ago.
Yeah, probably.
But, it was... I might have had, like, the guitar file for it or something, but all of the master files with all of the stuff was on his laptop, and that's why. But, that is one thing, just as an aside, that is a pain with working with a bunch of other people, is keeping all that stuff, keeping all the stems and everything, keeping them straight, archiving them, keeping them from... getting spread out over 6 different computers with 3 different people in the pot. That is a pain in the neck.
That's why we invented GitHub.
Yeah.
Even though I hate that thing.
I probably should do something along those lines for the Whaler stuff, because I'll tell you, sometimes it makes me want to pull my hair out. All these stems all over the place.
I definitely recommend it, because while what it does do for you is it gives you a nice good timeline branch of everything, and you can like separate branches. So if you want to like mess with a few things, you could do it without messing up the main thing. But like if you have it so someone can like approve the change to the main branch, it works out if you're doing like a collaborative effort, I think. I don't know if people have done it for music per se. I know it's more of like a programmer's deal, which is why I know it, because that's my whole deal. It's my career. But it might, something like that might help you guys out a bit. That with music itself though, so like we know you work with the instrumentals of the singing and things like that. But so you dabbled in any of like the software like side of things with like the production, or do you mostly stick to just the actual physical instruments or anything?
When I first started doing this, I knew almost nothing about how to record digitally. Almost nothing. I had some little bit of experience with some programs, but not much. I had a crash course. Like I said, that was part of the reason that Luna's Ruse was such an interesting experience. I learned a lot just on how to do things through that. But to this day, I prefer to work, with when I'm writing, certainly just on a guitar and me singing and me banging stuff out. Though I have learned how to use a digital audio workstation pretty well, how to use the basics of MIDI, how to build stuff up. I mean, these are all things that you have to learn, if you're going to make the music. And I've just picked them up over the years, and I'm really glad I have. It's really kind of it's been an enriching experience, and I've learned some stuff.
All right, so we're going to now talk about one of my favorite things in music. I shouldn't even say my favorite. This is my favorite thing in music: lyrics. Love lyrics. And you do them well, which is probably why I have you here tonight, in all honesty.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. No, I honestly, the biggest thing for me is, does this song have catchy lyrics? If so, it's probably going to end up being one of my favorites, just by default, because that's always what gets me. It's why my family hates me, because everything I have is nothing but lyrics, and a lot of times it's either stuff about ponies, or it's just things that they're just like, what the heck are you listening to? I'm like, stuff that isn't about what mainstream radio plays, and I don't think I need to say more than that.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense.
Yeah. So anyway, what's your typical process for writing lyrics? Because I know that's your deal, and I'm curious.
Most of the time, it is, they either get written during the music making process or shortly afterwards. A lot of times I will pick up a guitar and be playing the part on the guitar. Um, Even if it's a song that I didn't necessarily write, even if it's bits of music that I've had sent to me, let's say for the Wailers, going, we're going to be working on this, but we need a lyric part for it. I'll learn the bare bones parts of it on the guitar, play the guitar, and then sing along with it. I find it's best for me to sing along with my guitar when I'm writing the lyrics. And then if I come up with a good line, I'll make sure I write it down so I don't forget it, and then work on the next one. And then other times I can stop, and as long as I can have it playing in my head, as long as I can have that song playing in my head, I'm always singing over it, even if it's just mentally. I'm singing the notes over it, where this gets held, we're stopping this note short, stopping this short, so I know how the syllables line in, and then I'll just write them all down. If it's a really tough case, and this has happened a couple of times, I'll make a pot of coffee, I'll put on crazy John Coltrane shrieking jazz, like the late model Coltrane, where it just sounds like he's making his sax explode. And I will sit down and I will put that on really loud, and I will just close my eyes, listen to it, and try to come up with words and phrases that have meaning towards the song. So if the song is, if I wanted to evoke a certain feel, or the music is evoking a certain feel in me, I try to pick words and phrases that go along with that feeling. And then if I can get enough of those, I can stitch them all together into something that's a more cohesive lyric unit. But if it's really tough, I'll just get bits, words, and or a couple of words or a phrase, and I'll write those down and then try to come up with something to fill in the gaps to make it sensible.
Huh. That's a very interesting process, actually. When I used to do like writing, not lyric writing, but regular old writing, what I would do is I kind of pick a topic I'd go with and kind of throw a few things out there. But that's interesting to just take bits and pieces and just slap them in like that.
That, you've got to, you can't, yeah, you're basically, that is what you're doing, but you've got to script them to
cohesively.
Yeah, you've got to do it cohesively, and
not random, but you're
exactly.
able to. It's like when you're a kid, you take like the blocks of like with the letters. I mean, you make like the thing out of them. You got to have, you form the phrasings with it, the proper spelling, and like the pyramid shape, whatever. Like you're doing it with order and such.
And here's where I think I'm a little bit of a weirdo, and so people are probably going to laugh at me, but I'll tell you this anyway. A lot of people like to think that words or music comes from inside of them, and so it's from something that comes from inside of you, and you've got to pull it out, like it's something stuck in you and you got to reach in and grab it and drag it out. I don't believe that. I believe that the universe wants to tell you its story. There's a story out there that it wants to tell you, and you have to shut up and listen to what the universe is trying to tell you to get those words, to get those phrases. That's why I said, I'll just drink a lot of coffee and listen to Coltrane, because it helps me turn my brain off. And I can actually sit back and listen and say, what does this music really want to tell me? What do I really want to say with this? And then I'll get snippets of words and phrases that will line up with the feeling that I want with the song. And then I can stretch those all together. And so it's important that you go, in my opinion, it's important that you go outside of yourself for that stuff. Don't try to create it from within yourself. Listen to what the story that the universe wants to tell you. It will tell you if you shut yourself up, shut up your own internal dialogue, if you will, and actually grab it. Let it tell you the story, and then you can tell it with your own twist. I know that's weird, but I really believe that.
I'm sure that's not the weirdest thing I've heard. Honestly, no, I shouldn't say I'm sure. I know that's not the weirdest thing I've heard. I think we all have our quirks. So honestly, that's not. I would even say that's weird. Period. That's everyone has their own reasons for inspiration and their own methods of creating things. So that kind of brings me to another question I am curious about: is that like something? Is that like what music means to you, or is that just? I'll just outright say, what does music mean to you?
I have a love-hate relationship with music. When things go together right, and things come together and a song comes out well, or you can sit back and you say, I did a pretty good job on this, which has happened sometimes. It's a fantastic feeling. But 90% of the time it's just me beating myself up for not being good enough.
Mm.
And I think that is,
That's just you being an artist, friend.
yeah, well, agreed. But to me, that's what music is all about. It's 90% beating yourself up, 9% being ambivalent or just working, and 1% actually getting something good. And he kind of reminds me, and I'm probably going to throw off some listeners by mentioning this because probably a lot of people don't care for this. But if you've ever played golf, have you ever played golf?
Golf, GOLF.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
At least like mini golf and like hitting it as far as you can, that kind of golf.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you're playing the hitting it as far as you can kind of golf, not that I'm a great golfer by any extent, but because I'm not. But I haven't played in a couple of years. But there was a period of time in my life where I played a fair amount, a couple of times a week. The point of the story is 90% of the time you make these god awful shots that end up in the water, in the woods. But every once in a while, you just hit it just right, and it's like a pro hit it. And there it goes, plunk, into the land, within 3 feet of the cup, and you're like, yes. And you only got to do that once or twice, and you're hooked. And it's the same thing with music. Most of the time, I'm hitting notes that are going off into the woods, and they're not good. And a lot of times I write stuff, and it comes out really bad. But every once in a while, you catch one just the right way, and it's like, yeah, I actually kind of liked that. That felt good. I mean, it's not as good as my hero. It's not as good as what some other people can do. But you know what? For me, I don't think I could do much better than what I did on this song. That's about as good as I'm going to get, at least at this point in my life. And that feeling will hook you when you get that. And so you keep trying anyway. So even though I hate it sometimes because it makes me hate myself, I keep going anyway, because every once in a while you get it right. And it feels really good to get it right.
All right. Let's see. Normally is around the time I'd ask for any people in the chat to ask questions, but it seems we have quite the small turnout tonight.
It's barren, huh?
Yeah, I blame partly myself. Last time I got a decent amount of prep time to get everything ready. But it's no big deal to see here. I don't know if people had it. It's a shame they're the ones missing out, really, because it's their chance. I still have a few though left on my end. And as for you, for anybody who's aspiring to producing content for the community or any community thing in general, what would you recommend?
I would say find somebody to work with that you like, and don't find somebody to work with for okay, let me start that over again. Find somebody to work with that you like and that brings out the best in you, because when you're first starting out, it's hard to make stuff on your own, and having somebody to work with is just a much better feeling. Collaborate, find a friend, make music together. It's much more fun that way. But one thing that I've seen people do, which I would recommend against, is a lot of times people will try to collaborate with people because they have a lot of viewers. It might make them more noticed. Don't do it for that reason. Do it because the person will complement your strengths and cover up your weaknesses, and you like the person, not because he has a lot of subscribers on YouTube. It's not a good reason to do it. You should do it because you like this person and you want to work with them and that they help you become a better musician. So that would be my recommendation. Find somebody to work with. Or, if you can't and you've got to do it on your own, enjoy it, put it out there, and just do it for the love of it. Because really, all you get in the enjoyment of doing it is its own reward.
Couldn't agree more with you there. I think what was it? I remember years ago, Silverhound said something along those lines of that at the musicians panel, BronyCon, where he pretty much said, if you're doing it for the game, get the you know what out.
Yeah.
And I agreed with that bit wholeheartedly, because my buddy Saber Spark, who was one of the instrumental people in getting me involved with this community to begin with, he was the one who made me realize to point out like that. He's like,
Cool
I'm
guy.
just a person, you know. I'm just a person to anybody else that you ask along the streets here, and that was my biggest thing that I realized. It's like, yeah, he's right about that, and I
Yep.
think that's what many people forget sometimes. They're so starstruck that they forget that this is a normal other human being. To someone else, they're just like, they're no, but not nobody in a negative way, but they don't know, they don't view you in the same light. You know, they could view, and I think I tell people it's just like they're normal people. Treat them like your neighbor. Treat them like any other person you would meet. You know, and you'll be surprised how well you can get along with them sometimes. For
Agreed.
that, and
Agreed.
I think that you'll end up enjoying yourself and having a much better time throughout that more. And I think the same could be said for if you're going to collaborate with somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, do it because their strengths complement your weaknesses or improve your weaknesses. Do it because you like the person. And most of all, just have fun with it.
Yes.
Don't just have fun with it. And I mean that. And you know what? You may not get 12, million hits on YouTube. Honestly, at this point, you're not even some of the big people don't get the hits that they used to get. It's not about that. It's about enjoying yourself, creating for the community, and being able to meet new people, make friends, and just do something cool.
It's like the show's called Friendship is Magic or something.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So I'm curious, do you have any plans of performing at more conventions, probably with the Whalers, I'd imagine?
At this point, there's nothing on the table.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that someone won't invite us.
Hmm.
It's possible we'll get an invite from a
Brony
convention, in which case we probably will take it. It is a little bit tough for me. Like, I'll admit this, like, I don't like all that much being the center of an attention. I can do it, and fortunately I'm lucky. I don't get stage fright or anything really. But whenever I'm up on stage, I'm closing my eyes and not looking at the audience because it drives me crazy. I mean, that's just me. Like, so I can do it, but it's actually a little stressful for me. But so I don't think we would ever perform a lot. But I think that I'm sure that if we get a couple of conventions that are interested in having us play, yeah, I would totally do that.
All right. I mean, I'll definitely be there.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. No, it was a great time. And actually, I'm going to talk a good time transport here. Brittany, she's quite amazing herself here. I can't get over her voice. It's insane.
Brittany rules. And if you knew her as a person, she's just as...
She looks like a fun person to be with, I'll be honest with you.
She is a wonderful human being. She is very sweet, very kind, very thoughtful, very intelligent. And she's every bit as beautiful as her voice is. So she's one of my favorite people that I've met from working with the Whalers, and it was an absolute honor to be on the same stage as her.
Yeah, no, because she's performed on even Broadway.
She's done shows, on Broadway, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the most interesting thing. Is like you already have this awesome gig doing this stuff, but yeah, you still take the time to just screw around with some people, just make some music for a horse fandom.
She is she's a great person.
Yeah.
She really is. So I only have praise for Brittany. I only have praise for her.
All right. So you mentioned other bands and people whose music you listen to. Is there any others that you would say that you really do quite enjoy? Any that are either well known or not well known?
The one that there's one pony guys that always kind of impressed me, and I always liked the Wonderbolts. And
I vaguely remember.
Yeah, they're really good. They're a band. They're an actual band, and they do a very good job. And I always enjoyed listening to them, and enjoyed the songs that they did. And so I would say that would be a good person to say that I really like.
Alrighty then, I'll take them a look. there's still other stuff around. But then again, people archive this stuff pretty well these days. Let's see. Running down the line here with what I have planned. Actually, here's a decent one. With the feedback that you've gotten on your work, like your overall community, how has it been for you? I mean, I wouldn't imagine it'd be terrible since generally the fandom's pretty nice, just barring any drama.
I can't believe how nice and how supportive everyone's always been. I've had no real issues at all with rude people, with nasty people, knock on wood.
Yeah.
I've had only fantastic interactions with listeners and fans, and they've been so overwhelmingly positive that I can take this time to thank everyone that has taken the time to listen to this. If you listen to my music, thank you for being so supportive over all these years, because you've been fantastic. Hell, I even miss Rick Satan. Do you remember Rick Satan? Did you know him?
Rick Satan, yes, I do. Wait, I do. He was I wrote, my goodness gracious, wow.
He would go on to.
He would
go on and troll all the pony music videos.
That's right. I remember Rick Satan. Wow.
I even miss him because sometimes he wouldn't even downvote me. He was such a nice guy. So
Damn.
The experience that I've had has been overwhelmingly positive. And you know what? Even if it wasn't completely, one of the things that I actually kind of enjoy some of the negative stuff too, to a certain degree. I'll see people, if you look at some of the videos on the Overmere site where they're talking about gameplay videos and such, there's a lot of people there, the Fallout fans, like the no mutants allowed hardcore Fallout fans who, write cancer all over everything. I kind of get a kick out of listening to those people anyway, because it's like, hey, look, a colorful pony, your day is ruined. So, it's all quite enjoyable for me to see that anyway. But, I don't get that with my fans. I don't get that with the people that listen to the Whalers or to my music or to Zako and I's music. It's always been really super polite, really nice people that have been super supportive, and that really means a lot to me. So if you're listening, thank you.
Nice, yeah. Rick Satan, jeez, I can't believe you. I cannot believe you. Like, I remember 2012 was great. I honestly, because I joined February 7th, 2012. I remember this because it was a day where my family had been out entirely, so that was when I decided to take the plunge into watching the show. But 2012 in general was a crazy fun year, and I remember Rick Satan with that. But it's been so long, like that's a blast from the past for me.
Sorry, I didn't mean to dig up that.
No, I'm glad you did. That's like I love when that kind of stuff comes back. It's incredible. Just you think like just somebody who just trolls on comments just kind of ends up becoming a legend in its own right.
I used to wait for him every time we put out a video. I'd be watching the comments. I'm like, okay, where's Rick Satan? He's coming. Usually it would be after. It was like waiting for Santa Claus to come on Christmas morning. It's like, hey, Rick Satan, you haven't commented on my video yet.
That's one way to put it. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, man. While this song that's playing on my mind here, Dream, there's just one that I ended up listening to the other night with that, and I know I've heard it before. I'm an interesting person where I hear a song. Luna's Ruse is the same thing with me here. I had heard about Luna's Ruse. I listened to it. I didn't care for it. Not that it was bad. I didn't care for it. And then I remember it was kind of coming up again, and a few people were mentioning it. I looked at it, I saw a lot of the old names like D Notive and old guys were like, this is like, incredible. And I mean, as it was at the time, 2011 was when everybody was like that was when it was like the rise of all the Brony music, and a lot of people were really homely and like friendly at that time. They still are, but there's just barring all the trauma. Once I listen to it a bit more again, then it's just like it clicks. Like I do this sometimes. I hear a song and I don't think much of it. Then like later down the line, like months or years later, I hear it again. And it's like this song is great, and it becomes like my favorite. And I don't know why that is. Sometimes it's just I have to be almost in the right mood to enjoy with it. But we've talked enough about Luna's Roost to really go over that. But Dream is one that's like not necessarily outright pony related, and that was one with Zako. How it just anything you could say about that one, because that one to me is one of the more interesting pieces you two made.
Dream was tough because that was the song that we did a little like instrumental thing after Luna's Ruse, but that was the first real song that we did after Luna's Ruse, and we weren't sure how well it was going to go over because Luna's Ruse went over really well. Where it's like, well, are people going to like this as much? And to me, I didn't mean it when I wrote the lyrics to make it specifically non-pony. I really didn't. I kind of figured it was like a Pegasus. It was about a Pegasus. The way I had written it. But, I probably could have written, the big thing I remember about that song is working on it, hoping it would be accepted as well as Luna's Ruse was, because Luna's Ruse blew me out of the water. When, like, you have to understand that when we released that song, we had absolutely no idea that people were going to like it. And we're getting all these wonderful comments from all these people. They're like, wow, people really like this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on cloud 9 for about 3 days straight while people were... I remember the first time that, like, I met... I don't do a lot of meetups or meet and greets. I don't. But there was a couple of times... I think somebody was showing an episode and I showed up. And they're like, oh, hey, who are you? And I told them, like, oh, I know you. I have your song on my iPod. And I'm like, what? What?
Yeah, that's got to be cool.
You know what? It was like, really? And so we're following up on that, and it was tough. Dream was a fun song, though. I did really enjoy making it. I really like the vibe of it.
Yeah, that's definitely, like, that's what really caught with me with that is, like, between Zako's work and your lyrics, it really blended itself in well for that. That one in particular, I think, is where you two just together really had played off of the one or the other in a unique way for that.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Any favorite verse or lyric that you wrote from any songs you made? Like any particular spot that you're just like, oh, I love that I wrote that.
I hate to go back to this, but I think to me, the one that always cracks me up, and my own lyrics shouldn't crack me up, but somehow this did it, was with Mail It In. And, all my stuff is, half my stuff is taped or glued. It's saying how he'd stayed up all night. Up all night reading catalogs, placing orders till I'm broke. All those little lines there that talk about the stuff, because she's so clumsy, I just imagine in this guy, this nerdy little pony sitting in a room going heh, heh, with a big crush on Derpy, flipping through catalogs, and there's always little tchotchkes and knickknacks piled all over every bit of the table and every bit of his desk and every bit of the, whatever, and half of them are broken because she dropped them on the way in. And I see that and I'm like, that's exactly what I wanted to do. That's exactly the image that I was lucky enough to convey. But yeah, the Mail It In does that to me sometimes. The whole thing about all my stuff tape, or it's hard to look her in the eye. So Mail It In cracks me up sometimes with that.
Nice. Huh. All right. Well, I've just about run out of all my own questions here, and unless somebody in the chat speaks up right now, if there's anybody here, we can ask more with that. But I feel like it's just been a dry night tonight. I'll apologize for, it is an awkward night. I'll definitely it's just tricky with college and all that. So I'm gonna have to try to find a better time for future things here. But either way, I'm glad that you've been here so for the whole thing tonight.
I had a blast talking
Yeah.
to you. I'm honored that you would make these questions and ask them of me. I'm glad that anybody tuned in, and that anybody would. If you're listening to this on YouTube later or whatever, thanks for listening. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. So just a few closing questions before we sign off here for the night.
Sure.
I'm just gonna ask you. So for anybody here, what is the best way for someone to get into contact with you?
Um, I would say, I'll give it out. I have my Skype account is Haymaker Pony, HaymakerPony, and you can get a reach from me there. You can also use that same at Gmail. Haymaker Pony at Gmail works. And also Haymaker Pony on Twitter. All of those are a pretty good way to get a hold of me.
I'll have the links in the description for everybody who's listening to the recording.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And Twitter too, I know, is a good way there. So
Twitter is probably one of the better ways to get a hold of me because I usually have my phone on me, and I usually pay attention when the tweets go off. I'm not always sitting in front of my computer. I don't trust phone Skype. It doesn't work half the time.
It does not work at all. You're not wrong there. As a tech person, I am. It's disgusting.
It's not very good.
It bothers me that this is made by a billion-dollar company that just can't get a simple IM application to work right.
Well, it almost always displays the ads, which is the point.
It almost always says that you're online when you're not. That's the biggest thing that bugs me is because it's not that. Because I get people message me, and it's just like, I thought you were on. Like, no, I wasn't. What did you think I was on? And it said you were. I was like, Skype.
Skype lies.
Stop lying to my friends. Making me look bad here. But not Twitter. At least you're lucky enough to have the whole. I find the big thing to be is like when you're like middle ground famous, you're like, okay, you have people who will talk to you, but you're not going to be like, oh, geez, I got to start filtering.
Yeah, no, you know what? I'm pretty good. Unless I'm a pretty friendly guy. If I'm not responding to you, it's one of two things. Either I'm just not paying attention to my phone or my computer, which I do sometimes. I admit that fully. Or, you've just driven me absolutely bonkers, but you really have to work at that to drive me crazy. I'm a pretty open guy. So, if anybody out there really wants to bug me, just tweet at me or, you can try to find me on Skype. I'm fine with that. I'm a friendly guy.
Okay. So, I'm going to ask you, so how long do you keep planning to do what you do?
As long as I'm having fun.
As long as you're having fun.
As long as I'm having fun, I keep doing it.
Nice. All right. My final question is, are there any other creators out there that you'd recommend taking a look at?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to plug them again. Check out the Wonderbolts. They're awesome.
Okay. Fair enough. Just so it helps me out, too, for looking at future prospects for these things. Cause
sure.
Especially then when I have, like, a recommendation, too. It goes a lot better. I know who to really pick and choose from. But, all right. The Wonderbolts definitely, like, they're still around, too?
Oh, yeah, they are.
Okay, good to know, yeah. Because... believe me, there's so many people who I wish I was a bit more proactive back in the day with Zako, for example.
Yeah.
Then again, by the time that he had phased out with a lot of things, I was just getting my whole podcasting stuff off the ground, really.
Yeah.
Some of his stuff, it saddens, and I like just to go on a tangent here. Some of his stuff saddens me that it's like so underappreciated. I love After the Apocalypse. That's one of my favorite things he ever made. From that, his remake. Okay, another thing with me, for people who don't know me, I love All Levels at Once. Levels has been my favorite musician for the longest time now. Between his ability to create such crazy melodies and his lyric writing is just top tier. So when Zako did that remix for Lament, I was flabbergasted.
I loved it too. I remember him playing it for me and going, dude, you did it. You knocked it out of the park on this one.
My screen went black here. Whoops. This happens sometimes. I think I need to change. I need to get rid of my hotkeys because they seem to like to just randomly go off at times. What's the point of having a number pad key? Anyway, but no, with him, because Lament was originally with Levels' style, it's always very uppity. That, and yet what it talks about is very not so happy. Even though that's the funny thing, Levels always sings about something so kind of depressing, but does it in such a way that you kind of feel happy about it almost. But Zako literally took it for what it was and made it so like just deep regret. You could like he I could just feel like that when you could just describe music as a feeling. Sako did that so well with that, and like that remains to me is like there's anything that I could say like what remix is better than the original. That's where I play people to. I can't get enough of it for that one there.
I did love his version of that as well. I really did.
Yeah. Anyway, him there. Anyway, everybody who's here listening, this has been From the Horse's Mouth with our guest Haymaker, and thank you all for joining us tonight. We've certainly had a blast. I know I have.
I know I have.
And do stay tuned for future episodes. I am going to try and get more consistent with these. I know I said once a month. Just bear in mind, it's crazy with college here. I finally got a few things taken care of my own personal life, and I have Fritzy Beat currently on. I do have him finally on the wait list, so hopefully you can see with him.
Cool.
And I'm going to try to get a few more people between. I might go for a few other animating people. I do have a few friends that I could easily reach out to. So for those of that, stay tuned for the future episodes, and I will see you all next time. It's been the Loyal Brony and Haymaker.
Hey.
Thank you all so much, and have a great night.
Good night, folks.